We are in Palermo at the 50th International Congress of FITCE. We are discussing about next generation network, NGN between fiber and wireless, competition or cooperation between these two technologies.
Well, certainly the cooperation between these two types of technologies. The span of use of fibers is continuously extending from the core of the networks toward the houses and the offices. And certainly it might well be that the last part, the last meters or the last 50 meters will be wireless, while the rest of the connection will be on fiber.
Right. Well, first of all, I would say that Next Generation Network, NGN, actually has two components. There is the link from the customer to the network, which is access, which is usually referred to as Next Generation Access. And as you say, that has been very much associated with the idea of optical fiber. But the second part of NGN, which is just as important, is the network itself, which is Next Generation Network is about moving everything onto a common IP-based platform. Those two things side by side. High-speed access, which has up till now we've assumed to be fiber, and the IP-based core network. Both are necessary and both are progressing. So your question really relates to the next generation access part of the network. So addressing that point directly, what the objective is that we want to be able to give customers high-speed access for broadband, and for a variety of different applications. And whilst that was originally associated with optical fiber as being the ultimate solution, and that's still the case because there is nothing better than optical fiber in terms of cost and capacity, given certain conditions. However, when you consider that many customers are a long way from the exchange, that many customers are living in remote areas and so on, then the economics of using optical fiber in those situations does not make sense, first point. The second point is that there has been a big movement in the way that people use devices such as this, which are very attractive. These are intelligent mobile phones. People like to use mobile. And of course, mobile is different to optical fiber. And so there has been, in parallel with the development of optical fiber access, there has been this huge increase in the use of radio or wireless associated with both mobile networks, which is what GSM and third generation like this is doing, but also Wi-Fi, which is using radio in a fixed sense. So wireless and mobile have progressed in parallel with optical fiber. So we now, as your question suggested, we now have a choice of optical fiber, which may well be the long-term optimal way of providing next generation access, but we have the increasingly popular and easy to deploy microwave radio as well. So that's the reason, I think, for the changes you've described.
Well, I believe both of those are very critical technologies, very significant technologies. And my opinion is that there has to be a cooperation in order to have the best results for the telecommunications sector. For example, there are quite a few, recently there are quite a few works that support the wireless to be in the access network. So with the new technologies, for example, with the LTE, we can have high bit rates to the users, and then we can use fiber optics in the backhauling just to carry back in the main buildings all the huge traffic built by the different consumers. So I believe that the cooperation of those technologies will be the best for the ICT sector.
if we project ourselves probably in 20 years' time, wireless will dominate clearly, but we've got to get there. And if I look at the wireless as it is today, the lack of spectrum that we have, we need to have many antennas, and these antennas will need to have to be linked by backhauling in fiber. As you are creating this pervasive backhauling in fiber, it doesn't really make sense not to extend it to buildings. So what I see in the next few years is that gradually we're going to extend the optical fiber from the metro area into the buildings. We might have different solutions for getting to the apartment in these buildings, and we are in parallel going to see LTE progressing and overlaying all this fiber infrastructure. But I think both of them will be there.
Absolutely cooperation, because the access network in the future will be developed by fiber optic links connected by the user, but also wireless connection. Maybe if we think 4 years ago, the connection are totally DSL connection, fixed connection. Up to now, maybe the future could be moved in the wireless connection with introducing of iPad, tablet, Wi-Fi, iPhone, and so on. The connection, the wireless connection, the ubiquity connection in ADSL, in broadband will be the future. But all this future could be connected if a platform of fiber optic link could manage the transportation of this broadband connection at the end user.
I don't think it's really a problem of cooperation or competition. I think the main point is that fiber and wireless adds to one another, because fiber is a very good solution for high bandwidth in very densely populated areas, whereas it is not a solution for an area where you have only few people living. So we have areas in Germany where you have maybe a handful of people within a square mile only. So there it is not a financially good solution to have fiber optics deployed, and that is the way Deutsche Telekom goes by deploying wireless access at high bandwidth, the so-called frequencies which were in use formerly by the television and by the radio stations, now being deployed or being used for access of wireless networks to the customer. And this is what I mean. It's a solution which adds together both parts, and it's not working wireless and fiber optics against one another.
I think we will have both. If you look at the world today, the world is going fully wireless or mobile. Every application is turning into also a mobile application. But on the other hand, we also see enormous evolutions in the use of certain services which require a lot of bandwidth, for which you will need fixed networks and fiber to the home ultimately in order to support in a decent way those very high density television networks and so on. So I think we will have both worlds together. And in some areas, obviously, there will be competition, but we will go to another world, which will be wireless, which will be mobile, which will have, for the consumer, a lot of capacity in a home network.
I think it's possible several answers for this question, but for me the most important is the cooperation, because I think there are the possible the development of business in 2 lines of type the technology. The technology is not relevant, and if not we can observe the moment, the precise moment in that this technology is developed. And the fiber traditionally is the most important investment required for to put in the services in route. But the wireless compete with less investment. But there are many infrastructure installed the past years, 10, 15 years ago. In the big cities was installed many fiber. It's necessary to profit this type of infrastructure, and this is possible to compete and price with the wireless. But in the other countries or the rural zones or the less inhabitants, it's more interesting to develop wireless because don't have the infrastructures, is my opinion.